Welcome, everyone. I am so excited to be here today to host our DBA Living Legends session. This is a wonderful series where we highlight wonderful, admirable people in our legal community that are doing amazing things in our profession. So here today we have Judge Renee Toliver, and I'm so excited to be a part of this conversation with you and have this discussion with you. And so first, I want to start off by introducing myself. I'm Amber Hamilton Gregg. I'm senior counsel at DART, Dallas Area Rapid Transit. I'm in the litigation department. And so I'm going to introduce Judge Renee Toliver at this time. So Judge Toliver was born and raised in Fort Worth, Texas. She's educated in public schools. In May 1981, she received her bachelor's in journalism from Howard University in Washington, D.C., and in May 1984, she got her Juris Doctorate from the University of Texas at Austin. She served as an assistant criminal district attorney in Tarrant County for more than 8 years and was chief of its gang prosecution unit. On January 9, 1995, Judge Toliver was appointed assistant United States attorney for the Northern District of Texas, where she handled complex multi-defendant criminal litigation in the Organized Crime and Drug Enforcement Task Force Unit and later served in the appellate section. Before taking the bench on June 25, 2010, Judge Toliver had tried more than 60 state and federal cases to jury verdict and also authored more than 140 appellate briefs and argued numerous times before the United States Courts of Appeal for the Fifth Circuit. In addition to handling her heavy civil and criminal dockets, Judge Toliver has been co-presiding judge of the Northern District of Texas's Sentencing to Equip People for Success, also called STEPS Court. It's a pretrial diversion program, and since its inception in 2019, and more recently, she's also began presiding over the proactive approach for successful supervision, which is also called the PASS Court, and that is a post-conviction re-entry court program. Upon appointment by Chief Justice Roberts, she served as the Magistrate Judge Representative on the Judicial Conference Information Technology Committee for over 6 years, and she continues to serve on the Northern District of Texas and Fifth Circuit IT committees. Judge Toliver's bar and community engagement activities include speaking to civic, educational, and religious groups, judging moot court and mock trial competitions, and being a presenter for local and state CLE courses. She also previously served as the judge representative on the councils of the DBA Business Litigation and Employment Law sections. Judge Toliver is a bencher on the William Mack Taylor Inn of Court, co-chairs its mentoring committee, and was recently honored as Sergeant of the Inn. Her other current memberships include the Dallas Bar Association, the Federal Bar Association, the American Bar Association, the St. Thomas More Legal Society, the J.L. Turner Legal Association, the Federal Magistrate Judges Association, Sustaining Fellow of the Texas Bar Foundation, and Delta Sigma Theta Incorporated, which is a public service sorority. So welcome, Judge Toliver. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, Amber.
Yes. So, of course, we want to get started with our very important discussion where we want our viewers to get to know more about you and why you are a living legend in our Dallas-Fort Worth community. So first, I want to start off by just asking you about your very humble beginnings. I read an article in the Dallas Morning News, and it just stated how you didn't always was raised with the silver spoon. You had very humble beginnings. So can you tell us more about your upbringing?
Sure. You know, I as part of trying to inspire younger people, I will sometimes start out by telling them that I am the daughter of a teen mother who herself was the daughter of a teen mother. And, you know, it's really important to know that you can start in beginnings like that. I lived in the public housing project several years out of my life. I can remember a point when we were homeless. You know, it wasn't unusual because my mother was a single mother and working really hard to take care of me and my 3 brothers, that there were occasions when, you know, the light bill couldn't be paid and the lights were off, or the gas bill couldn't be paid and the gas bill was off. But I think all of that, you know, is a part of my story and a part of my history that helps me be a better person, a better lawyer and a better judge. I've been so fortunate, all the opportunities that have been given me or I've earned or have come my way, so that I end up where I am today. And you say I'm a living legend, and I say you're just saying I'm old.
Not at all. Not at all. Well, what made you or pivoted you or gravitated you towards the field of law and studying in our legal profession?
So it's sort of a funny story. We would visit sometimes my dad's mother, especially when he was still in the Army, which he was for many years. And she loved Perry Mason. And so Perry Mason was on the television every single time Perry Mason was shown. And I loved Perry Mason. This is so weird. And I'm thinking, I want to do that. I want to be like Perry Mason. Later I wouldn't be a defense attorney like Perry Mason, but I always tell people Perry Mason didn't just get his client off. Perry Mason also found the guilty person. So in that respect, Perry Mason was like a prosecutor, which I ended up doing, as you know, for all those years. But really and truly, in growing up in the Black community, you see very few types of professionals. Or back then you did, and it's different today. And, I saw teachers, they were, the cream of the crop, in the segregated schools. There would be a sprinkling of doctors. There were a sprinkling of lawyers. I mean, I can remember growing up and just hearing about the same 3 lawyers over and over again. But I thought, I could do that. I could be Perry Mason. I could help people. And so I actually got the bug. And so when I went to undergrad, I went knowing that my path was going to take me to law school.
Well, thank you, Perry Mason. I'm so glad that you were exposed to that. Otherwise, we wouldn't have you. So thankful for that. And so you talked about going to undergrad and knowing that you wanted to go into law school. So you chose Howard University for your undergrad, and then you chose to go to UT Law to get your Juris Doctorate. So can you tell us about those experiences and how you made those decisions to go to those schools, and what was your experience like there?
Howard was actually a contrived choice. And that's because my mother didn't want me at 17 going off anywhere outside of Texas. But I decided that since so many legends had come through Howard University, that there was no way she was going to balk at me having the opportunity to go there. And of course, it didn't hurt that they gave me an absolute full ride for all the time that I was there. And so that's how I got to Howard. And it was a really eye-opening experience. Back in the late 70s, I had graduated from an all-Black high school. And Howard, as you know, is predominantly African-American. But the people there weren't from Fort Worth. They were from all over. I didn't even know until I got to Howard that they had Black people in places like Iowa and Idaho. But I met so many different people, and it opened my world because they were, to be honest, more politically aware than I was. They were aware of socially more and more politically aware. And so the campus was vibrant, and anyone who's been there will tell you that. And I learned so much and developed more. I was the shy girl in high school. I was the yearbook editor and the, student council president and all of that, but I was still the very shy little fat girl. And so it wasn't until I got to Howard that, I really started to feel like, I'm part of a bigger world. That's the way I would explain it. It's a totally different experience going to UT. And the reason, my mother, I'm going to blame it on her again, is the reason that I ended up back in Texas. She wanted me to come home. And so I applied and was accepted to, the several major law schools in Texas. And UT, highly ranked, and very importantly, is a state school, so that the cost of it, even with the scholarship, I could manage. So that's how I got to UT. And I say it was a whole different experience because my class, which recently celebrated 40 years, had very few African Americans. But interestingly, my year, there were 39 out of a class of 500, and touted as the largest class of African Americans at the UT Law School. But it was during a time that there was a lawsuit talking about reverse discrimination. There was a professor who was in the Daily Texan, the school newspaper, every day, almost talking about how inferior the Black law students were, and we had taken the place of some more qualified white law students. And it was somewhat oppressive. I still met wonderful people there. I had a good experience, but there was always the undertone of, not being totally accepted and wanted just because of what was going on the campus and in the country at that time. But I don't regret it in any way. It was an excellent law school experience, and I still have friends from there today. I sit next to one of them in my end of court, and she was the one who sat next to me in my first year sessions. And the class was so big, though, that I still meet people who will say, I was your law school classmate. And I would say, oh, yes, that's right. They did not have a clue, especially after we've all aged, right, that they were my actual classmates. But I did. I don't regret that experience at all. It was different, and it opened my eyes to a broader world that I had been denied after going to segregated public schools and then choosing to go to an HBCU.
And I went to Texas A&M University for undergrad, so I can relate to the difference in the cultures coming from a predominantly minority high school. So there are a lot of different changes in traditions and culture that you have to take in, and ultimately it shapes you, and the experience makes you who you are.
Right.
So
right.
Grateful for that. So tell us about your first job out of law school. We know you were eventually an assistant district attorney and an assistant United States attorney, but what was your first job out of law school, and how did that job shape your career path?
Okay. Well, I didn't plan to do what I did first job out of law school. And I tell my interns and externs and law clerks that all the time, be flexible, because you never know what opportunities are going to be presented no matter what you've got planned. It's not always up to you and your plans. And so what I had planned was I was going to go work for legal services. I was sure that with my credentials, they would love to have me. And my thought was that I would go back to Fort Worth, my hometown, and I would hang out my shingle after I'd had experience doing a multitude of things through legal services. Well, about the time I graduated, funding to legal services was cut. And so there were no jobs. I still got interviews, though, and I still don't know why they were interviewing me. I'd contact legal service, oh, sure, come in, let's talk, and whatever. And then they would ultimately say, well, we don't have any positions. Funding was cut. Well, one of the last ones of those, and I want to say it was here when Dallas Legal Services was still North Legal Services, that North Texas Legal Services, that the interviewer, the supervisor, said to me, well, I have a friend who has a job opening as for a child welfare attorney with the Texas Department of Human Services in Arlington. At that point, I had been out of school, passed the bar in November, and this was like a few weeks after passing the bar, and I still didn't have a job. And so I was grateful for the recommendation, and I was hired. And that's what I did. And what a child welfare attorney did back then for the Department of Human Services, which is now the Department of Protective Services, I think it's been changed to, was to help social workers in cases where they had to remove children based on neglect and abuse. Under the statute, the district and county attorneys were responsible for handling those cases in court. But in the smaller counties, you can imagine they had fewer cases than in Dallas and in Tarrant County, where they had units dedicated to that. They had special prosecutors dedicated to doing that. And so mostly in the smaller counties, I would help draft the pleadings I would talk to the DA or county attorney who was going to be handling it and discuss, how it should be presented, what should be presented, what kind of order should ultimately come out of this. And interestingly, is how I got my first trial. Because up in Cook County, the county attorney had graduated just like me just recently, and had a really difficult termination of parental rights case that they asked me to talk to her about because it had been pending for so long. And she said, I could just, deputize you to try the case. And I'm like, sure, deputize me to try the case. And so that was my very first trial. So, that's what I did. It uniquely qualified me for that position in the Tarrant County DA's office, which is how I got my foot in the door.
So you are the first African-American magistrate judge that has been appointed to the Northern District for the United States. Is that right?
The Northern District of Texas.
Northern District of Texas, excuse me. And so was there ever any hesitation of you taking that position, being a minority and being a woman?
None whatsoever. I mean, I had applied more than once, and several folks who've gotten that position will tell you that's not unusual. I firmly believed that I'd be good at it. At that point, I had a number of years in the, 15 years in the U.S. Attorney's Office, and so I knew what magistrate judges do. And, it was time for someone with my background, my experience, I thought. And fortunately for me, the Merit Selection Committee thought I would be a good choice, recommended me to the district judges who gratefully gave me the position. But I never hesitated. I knew that I would be good at it, and I knew that I wanted to do it. It was an excellent opportunity for me. You hear people saying first Black, first African-American this and that, first woman that. And, it sounds cliche to say, in this day and age, it's kind of sad to be the first, but somebody has to be the first. And I hope that by them taking a chance on me, me doing a good job, that won't even be an issue going forward when new magistrate judges are chosen, and that everybody has the same opportunity. So someone has to be first, and I'm grateful and proud to be the one.
And we are too. We're very proud of you and grateful that you took the opportunity. And so we know from your introduction that you are over and you oversee a pretrial diversion program and a post-conviction program. So can you tell us about those programs and what you do and your involvement with those?
Sure. The pretrial diversion program, which is the steps court that you mentioned, it's part of a team. I'm the judge on the team, but the team is comprised of AUSA, probation officers, and the district judges who preside over the federal felony cases. When requested, will say yay or nay to someone becoming a part of it. And the way they're chosen is that, they're in this system. They've got a federal felony. A lot of times it's drugs. A lot of times it's something else. We've had bank robbery. Something that is basically when they get convicted, it's going to just impact their lives in a really negative way. But the probation officers have identified them as folks who, with intensive supervision and intensive services, might not need to have a penitentiary term. They might need probation. Or the other track, they might not even need a felony conviction. And so that's what we do. They come into the program and they get really, really tough supervision, but they get a lot of services too. They need drug treatment, they get drug treatment. If they need mental health evaluation, mental health counseling, they get that. If they have physical problems, and then there are the personal problems. What does your family look like? Do you have a job? Those kind of things are the things that are addressed in that program. And at the conclusion of it, if they're successful, then they get their case dismissed, or they get a probated sentence, and they know that that's what they're working for. We just today had the graduation of one of the steps participants, And in the past court, which I recently just started presiding over after my colleague and now Fifth Circuit Judge Irma Ramirez, who was the judge for that, was elevated, is on the opposite end of the spectrum. The folks who are there are the folks that are identified as most likely not to succeed in post-conviction supervision. And so these are folks who have been to the penitentiary, and sometimes more than once, but have the same kind of issues. Maybe drug abuse, maybe job insecurity or not having a job. And those issues, just like in the pretrial diversion program, are addressed throughout the past court program. And the carrot in the past court program is that the district judge, if they successfully complete it, will reduce their term of supervision so they can get off paper, so to speak, earlier than they would have if they hadn't successfully completed the program. And I mean, they're both are so rewarding from my perspective. I mean, I was a prosecutor, get in there, you know how it is, get justice, as we would say, kick butt and take names. And then from this perspective, you're seeing it as the neutral, but you're also seeing from both of those perspectives that, there are reasons these people are there. And maybe their reasons are something that we can help them with so that they don't have to be a part of this system or don't have to be a part of this system as long. And so I appreciate that. It's one of the most heartbreaking things that I've ever experienced because you are delving into people's personal lives and trying to make a difference. And sometimes you can't. I mean, earlier this year, one of our STEPS participants who was on the verge of graduation and had ups and downs, but we were getting her through it, sadly overdosed on fentanyl. And so, I mean, this is the real world, and these are real people's lives, and we're dealing with that. And so it can be extremely heartbreaking, but it's also so very fulfilling.
Yes, and I can relate to that. When I was a prosecutor at the District Attorney's Office for Dallas County, I was the prosecutor that oversaw the DDC court, which was the dual diagnosis court. So they had drug offenses, drug issues, mental health conditions that need to be addressed. They would help them with that, the services, Metro Care, and then there would be a graduation ceremony. So what you said about being in a rewarding part of your job, seeing those people succeed and getting a second chance in the community, I can relate to that, and I commend you for being a part of such a wonderful program like that, even though there is the heartbreaking part as well when you don't see them succeed as you wish they would. So I do want to talk about challenges of being a magistrate judge. What would you say is the biggest challenge in your position?
The biggest challenge, I think, is having to serve 10 masters, so to speak. Between the district judges, an active service, and the senior district judges, every single one has his or her way of doing things, thoughts about how things should do. And, unlike the law clerks who are basically tailoring how they handle things to how they know their judge would want it to be handled, I have to think independently. We have to think independently. We have to act independently. And, sometimes just knowing that the judges have different opinions, different approaches to things, can be kind of difficult to keep all of that in mind while you're doing it. But overall, I like to say it's a great gig. I mean, I would recommend it to anyone. And there's just not a lot of downside to it, really. The work is never ends. We make it look easy is what I'm going to say. But between criminal and civil dockets, it's very challenging, but again, rewarding. So, but if I had to put my finger on something that is a special challenge, I would say that's what it is.
And for the viewers that might not know, what is the difference of your job between being a magistrate judge and being a United States District Court judge?
We can do everything that a district judge can do except try a federal felony case. So what that means practically is it depends on how we do it as opposed to can we do it. And so we get what we handle, we get on referral from the district judges. You know, our job one is to make their job easier or their jobs easier. And so some things are automatically referred, such as preliminary criminal proceedings or cases that involve pro se plaintiffs or just certain types of cases. And some things are referred directly from each district judge. And this is getting into what I was trying to say. So the district judges don't have any clue what the other district judges are referring to us. And some of them utilize us for a lot more things than others do. But we either make a determination, especially when it's based on a non-dispositive motion in a civil case, or whether someone is to be detained, or we issue search warrants, an arrest warrant, and electronic surveillance warrants. We do that directly. We do orders. When it's a dispositive issue, such as a motion for summary judgment or a motion to dismiss under Federal Rule 12, then we do it on a report and recommendation, which in our district we call findings, conclusions, and recommendations. And we do that. The recommendation is filed, but it's to the district judge, and the district judge and the parties have 14 days to object. And then if they don't object, the district judge is just reviewing it to make sure we didn't clearly err in some way. And if they do object, then the district judge reviews those portions they object to of our findings, conclusions, and recommendations for de novo review, and either accepts or rejects. Usually, almost always accepts. They are accepted, but not because it's an automatic thing by any means. But we try to do a good job. And again, there's nothing that comes through the courthouse we can't do except a federal felony trial.
And what was your process like of obtaining that type of position?
Okay. So district judges go through the same process as Court of Appeals judges and Supreme Court justices. They're nominated by the president with the advice and consent of the Senate, which means their nomination has to be approved by the Senate, and they're appointed. And as Judge Barbara Lynn, who doesn't mince words, will tell somebody, their process was, heavily political. On the other hand, the magistrate judge appointment process is statutory and merit-based. In a place like Dallas, there are hundreds of applications for those positions. The minimum requirements are admission to the bar for at least 5 years in the jurisdiction where you're going to serve. But magistrate judges have much more experience than that. And that's because, people with a lot more experience are the ones who apply. And what happens is the judges appoint, in the district, appoint a merit selection panel, mostly lawyers, but the statute says it has to include non-lawyers as well. They review the applications and determine who they're going to interview. They interview a certain number of candidates. They recommend fewer than that to the district judges. Usually in Dallas, it's around 5 people that they will recommend as finalists to the district judges. The district judges meet as a group, and by district, I mean, even if the position like mine was in Dallas, judges from all around the district meet. interview the candidates, and then vote and decide who it is they want. And it really is a merit selection process. And you can, as you can imagine, since my job is to make their job easier, then it behooves them to make sure that they get someone who's going to do my job well, or it won't be helpful for them. And so that's the process that I went through to become a magistrate judge.
Hey, and you have just done so many phenomenal things in your career. Was there ever a point in time where you encountered imposter syndrome? And for someone that finds themselves encountering that, what is your advice to them?
I'm going to be honest with you, I'm old enough that people didn't talk in terms of imposter syndrome until recently, and I probably wouldn't know what it is if I didn't have a 23-year-old son who could tell me those things. But knowing that, it's a feeling of inadequacy when in this situation, in a position that you're asking me about, I've definitely experienced that in my life. Not frequently, but there have been occasions. One of them was, graduating from a predominantly Black high school. I was at the top of my class, but I started thinking, maybe this isn't preparing me for college the way it should be, And so it's like, well, how will I know? And what I did was I applied for early admission to Tarrant County Junior College. At the time, there was Tarrant County College, so that I could take classes there while I was still in high school in the summer. And I earned credit hours, and I saw that I could do at least that level of work. And so that quieted my fears about whether or not I would have what it would take to go on to Howard. I experienced that just because of the atmosphere at UT. Like I said, it was a whole different world. And, I think I was probably one of the only people there who hadn't seen Paper Chase. So even walking into a big 100 person section in first year and, the whole, Socratic method and, was just foreign to me. And so I did have those feelings like, do I have what it takes? I mean, I wanted to believe, your LSAT scores were wonderful. You did well until you decided you were going to be a sorority girl in college and had a full scholarship. So and so the way I got past that was seeing myself succeed in it. And, and that's really the only way that I could think of to be able to do it, was just to do the work, to be present and to succeed at it. My very first legal job, it was my very first legal job. Of course I felt like that. I'm just out of law school. I've passed the bar, but what I'm about to do as a child welfare attorney is nothing I studied, for the bar. And so just doing it, and, as a prosecutor, especially going to the DA's office, how am I going to do this? And there are very few people who look like me there. I did worry about it. But again, getting that success under my belt made me feel confident. And so it's been that way. And by the time that I made it to this job, I had enough successes that I can honestly say that there was no doubt in my mind that I could do this. So none for this job in particular, but of course, it's just normal to have those feelings along the way. And I think that's the cure for it. It's just to get in there and do a heck of a job so that that you belong, that you're qualified, and you can do this.
Wonderful. And I love that you say, just do it, just doing it and seeing yourself succeed. Those are phrases that I think are so powerful. So did you have any mentors, people that helped guided you along the way? Did you seek out mentors, or did they just happen to, come upon them, as you journey through your legal career? Can you tell us about them?
Definitely. One of my very first ones was a judge in Fort Worth named Mary Ellen Hicks. when I was in high school, she came to my high school and she was loud talking and got 𝐏𝐥𝐞𝐚 pants wearing and, was, this hip young lawyer who went on to be a municipal court judge before she became a district judge, state district judge in Tarrant County. And, it was nice, first of all, just to see her. I never knew a woman lawyer. Like I said, there were 3 male Black attorneys when I was growing up that you heard their voices all the time or you heard their names all the time. And so this is like me. She is like me. And fortunately for me, I was able to meet her. And she gave me an internship in the municipal court when I was still in college. So I got to be around her. And when I became a lawyer, she was a judge there and was always encouraging. And I can't say that I thought to myself, I need her as a mentor. It was just that she was there for me and a lot of other people too, not only as an example, but someone who was trying to steer us and give us opportunities. And there have been lots of people that I've looked up to in my career. Who have just been examples of what it is that I think I want to be as a lawyer. And fortunately for me, to a person, they've been willing to be that for me, even without me asking them that. But again, I'll never forget Afro-wearing, gum-chewing, 𝐏𝐥𝐞 pants wearing Mary Ellen Hicks, who came to my high school all those years ago.
Okay. Now, we talked a lot about your professional life, but want to know more about your personal life and how you maintain a balance between being a magistrate judge and your personal life.
Well, it's another place where it's like, just do it, right? You don't have a choice for it. And I don't, and probably some of the people who are watching today know that I'm the mother of twin young men. One of them was diagnosed before he was 3 years old with autism, and he's been profoundly impacted by it. He will always need care. And everything I have done, every job I have had, they come first. How it's going to impact them is what I think of first before even considering the job. And I am so fortunate to have that village, those family members and really close friends who support me in helping me to deal with the challenges of a professional career and to raise those sons. But again, every time, and I think this is really important, not so much now, because, the world is changing from when I started even 23 years ago when they were born, pursuing a professional career and raising them. But even now, there's this, kind of unspoken kind of attitude out there among some that you can't do both. You can do both. You just have to decide that, my family's going to be first. My family is going to be the most important thing, and I'm going to do this well around it, And so, I've been really, really fortunate. I mean, I laugh and tell people, one of the proudest moments in my life was when my local elementary school PTA nominated me, and I was selected for a state PTA award. It's like, yeah. And I mean, I was in the U.S. Attorney's Office, but every opportunity I could, I was figuring out how I could get to that school, how I could be a part of what was going on there, how I could read to the classes, how my disabled son didn't have to miss the field trip because I was going to be the extra companion so that the teachers didn't have to worry about, looking out for him, keeping him from running away, getting away or whatever. And so, and I can't even imagine, my life any different than that. I can't imagine it. And everyone I've worked for has known my situation, and to a person, again, always supportive of it. The district judges knew my situation when they hired me, but always supportive of it. So,
And I am so grateful that you are honest and just so open about your personal life. My nephew has autism, and he will always need care, similar to your son. And our family is such a big advocate of him and supporter of autism awareness. So thank you for sharing that. It's very personal to me. And it also, people don't realize that there are heavy things that people, have to quote unquote check at the door when they're coming into their jobs, right? That's what mothers are expected to do sometimes. It's refreshing to hear you talk about being a magistrate judge and be able to balance also being a very committed mother. Thank you for sharing that. And the heaviness also comes with being a African-American woman, being a Black woman in a criminal justice field as an assistant U.S. attorney and as an assistant district attorney. I felt it at times, for sure, as an assistant district attorney in Dallas. So can you tell me a little bit about the heaviness that comes with being African-American and seeing a disproportionate number of, the suspects and people that are being charged for crimes and convicted of crimes being African-Americans?
That's heartbreaking. And, but it is a fact, because the flip side of that is that disproportionately we are victims as well. And I learned that very early in my tenure at the DA's office when I moved to the criminal side. And so I approached it in that way. And especially being at home, I would run into people who, your family, I know your family, or my family, or things like that. But when I got to the DA's office, investigators in the DA's office who I loved and who I worked really well with would still say things like, this is a misdemeanor murder, when it was Black on Black, or it involved somebody who, was not the toast of the town, or the child of the toast of the town that was getting a lot of publicity because of it. And those cases were the last ones to be tried. And so I made it my mission that that's what I was going to do. The job of a prosecutor, as you know, is not to get convictions, but to do justice. And sometimes justice looks different than what the statute says. And so if you're fortunate enough to be in one of those positions, then you should count yourself lucky. I know being a prosecutor in my hometown, I would get you're the law, you're the man, we don't want you around. And I just laugh at it, because on the other hand, here's this mom, whose, and this is an actual case, son was murdered along with another young man by someone who went to my high school and was claiming that he did it because they were unarmed, but he was generally afraid because of how he'd grown up. And I'm like, wait a minute. I grew up there. I went to that school. I'm not murdering anybody, especially anybody who's unarmed. And so we have to be in those positions. We have to be prosecutors, just like we have to be defense attorneys to make a difference, whatever that difference is. We have to be judges. I would laugh that the portrait of my predecessor, who I love, William Sanders, was on the wall in my first courtroom, and there was no picture of me. In the state court courtrooms, the current judge has a picture of him or her, but nothing like that, where I am. And I would come and take the bench, and you could just see the faces of those folks who just were not expecting somebody who looked like me. I guess my point is, there are two sides to every coin. And, someone has to look out for us in the criminal justice system, but someone has to be that person who's fair to us, too, in the judicial system. And I never expected it, but I loved being a prosecutor and being able to help people. And I still hear from victims' families, or people will tell me that they talked to somebody from a victim's family who asked if they knew me and knew where I was, because it mattered that much, what I did for those people who didn't have a voice and were at the bottom of the heap when it came to seeking and realizing justice. So again, two sides to every coin. I didn't mind being the law. I relished in it because I help people.
So can you tell me about just your inspiration at this point in your life? What keeps you going? What helps you keep wanting to be a magistrate judge and be such a community service advocate in our legal community? What is your source of inspiration?
Well, first of all, from a job perspective, it is so interesting being a magistrate judge. You see so many things, and just when you think there's nothing new you can see, the next day you see something new. And so I'm always learning something, and to me that's fulfilling in its own way. I grew up in a family where community service was, tantamount to, if you can help somebody, you help somebody. And so that's how I've always thought, even when I didn't have much, what can I do to help somebody? And, my circumstance, and, I have some very public relatives, specifically a grandmother who's out there and, just epitomizing service. And so that's how I looked at it. And even being a young lawyer, I did things like decide, okay, this is something we can help the community with. We can be, and this is why I'm the prosecutor, we can do, come up with a voluntary paternity and uncontested divorce clinic for people who can't get lawyers. And we can get a judge, because we've got Judge Mary Allen Hicks, who's a family court judge, and we've got my colleague Ann Collins, who was working for legal services, and we've got clerk friends who can come and, creating like a night court where, it's a one-stop place. Couples come in, they take care of, making their legal relationships with their children be solidified. And, unfortunately, if they had parted ways, even getting a divorce when they couldn't otherwise. So I'm thinking these things, because this is but now I'm in a position where I can do this kind of thing. What about a wheels clinic for senior citizens, And then just out in the general community, even now, we've resurrected my grandmother's nonprofit. I did that because it's a lot of work, but just trying to help people, and it's called Citizens Concerned with Human Dignity. And just like she did, it's like trying to help people one at a time. What's their particular need, and what do we do about that, and how can we help them? And so again, I just come from a family where that is promoted and expected even. And so that's what I think. And, I've been so fortunate to have been accepted the way I have in the Dallas community, because that prior to being appointed over here to the bench in Dallas, my career was basically in Tarrant County. And so, people have just opened their arms to me. They stopped telling the jokes about, getting hometowned in Fort Worth and everybody over there wearing boots with their suits. But they really have been accepting of me, inviting me to be on the councils of the business. I'm losing my train of thought. The business and labor law employment sections. Bringing me in, within months to the Mac Taylor Inn of Court, and, encouraging me to, be a real part and to be a part of the management team of it. Just everywhere, young lawyers, Judge Toliver, come to this, Judge Toliver, speak at that, And so I am grateful, because it didn't have to be like that, that this bar community was so accepting of me and opened their arms to me. And so at every turn, I rarely say no. And upon seeing this, people will know that the only time I say no is when it conflicts with me caring for my son. But you ask me to do it, I'm going to do it if I can. And I'm proud to be a part of the Dallas legal community now, for almost 14 years.
And we appreciate you pouring into our legal community. And I love hearing that you felt so welcomed by the Dallas legal community. That's awesome to hear. And knowing that you feel you've been poured into, you continue to pour into others, that kind of pivots me into talking about people wanting to work for your wonderful court, whether it's an externship or clerkship, internship. Can you tell us, for law school students or associate attorneys who want to get the experience and want to work with you and for you, how the best avenue to do that?
Right. So, we have law clerks who are lawyers, who work in our chambers. You were one, so you know what that is like. I hadn't a clue until I was actually supervising law clerks what that was like. But to a person, it's a wonderful opportunity, especially for someone just coming out of law school. You just can't get the kind of experience that you get in a clerkship, the varied experience, and actually get to see the court at work in any other kind of position, I think. And so I'm always encouraging folks to apply for those. And you apply to the judges. I mean, they are our law clerks, and so you apply to the judges. We're fortunate to get the best and brightest applying, and so you try to distinguish yourself in some way so that you can rise to the top of that big pile of applications. But, apply to several judges. Make sure that you know something about the individual judges to distinguish yourself. But, keep your grades up, write in law school journals. Those are the kind of things we're looking for. Again, it is such a great job. For those still in law school, we have interns and externs, sometimes formally externs through the law school programs, frequently. But sometimes it's just because someone's reached out and said, do you have a space for me? And if I happen to have a space, I'm going to give it, just so they can have that experience. I want them to see what it would be like to be a law clerk. And so we get applications through different programs. We get applications through Dallas Young Lawyers program, Young Lawyers Association program for summer internships. SMU, Texas A&M in Fort Worth, they both have externship programs where the students get actual credit. And I will occasionally reach out and say, hey, are you planning to, send someone? I've got this spot. And, just make sure that they're, I'm giving that opportunity, because it's an opportunity I wish I had. I wish I had known about it. But again, that's the path, I think, to becoming a law clerk, to going on to do bigger and better things, which law clerks always do, like you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And so if you were not on the bench, could you ever see yourself being an attorney off the bench again? Now that you have obviously been on the bench, would you see yourself doing that?
Not a chance, because at this point in my life, I'm thinking about what the next phase is. I've had a wonderful career. I got to try cases. I got to argue cases and write briefs. And I've now had 14 years, in a little over a month of being a judge. Wonderful job again. And so at this stage in my life, again, you call me living legend, and I say that means that's code for old. I'm thinking about, what the next thing is. And the next thing, isn't getting out there and practicing law again. Been there, done that, But hopefully, helping people. I tell people that whenever it is I retire, this is what I'm going to do my first day. I'm going to sign up for senior yoga and to deliver Meals on Wheels, because I remember the knock at my great-grandmother's door when they would come to bring meals to her. And ironically, my uncle, who was disabled and she was taken care of as an adult, and would bring those meals to them. And they were so grateful. They were always so grateful. So that's what I tell folks. It's like, this is day one of retirement. And so, of course, everybody around me is retiring. I told you about this being my 40th anniversary of graduation from UT. And so UT created this system we could go on, and they encouraged us to go on and upload a picture and answer these questions about where we've been and where we've, are now, and, what would be a surprise to our classmates to learn about us. And I am surprised at how many folks have already retired. So I'm thinking, I'm a little behind in that, but I feel good. I think my mind is working very well. And so I don't have any plans of doing it, anytime, not very soon, but, it's always in the back of your mind, what are you going to do? Because, that stage is coming up in life.
Well, we know just based on what we have seen so far that what is to come is just excellence and continued just exceeding of expectations of everyone and just greatness. So thank you for being that for us in our community. And I want to thank you so much for your time and for doing this interview. We know that you have cases to get to on the bench, and you have your children that you're obviously watching after. So thank you for taking the time. We truly appreciate it. And thank you to the viewers for tuning in with us today. And we hope that you learned so much about this wonderful woman here, Judge Renee Toliver. And if you have any questions about anything regarding opportunities with the judge, please feel free to reach out to either one of us. Thank you so much to the Dallas Bar Association for providing this wonderful opportunity. Thank you.